Hello and welcome to the Holistic Pathway, unscripted conversations on mind, body, spirit, and entrepreneurship, a brand new video series where we dive deep into the holistic integration of life and business. I am Tammy Coyne, your holistic alchemist, helping you change pain into possibilities and possibilities into purpose. And I am delighted to chat today with Krista Marie. As a psychic channel and energy healer, one of her greatest gifts is the ability to create and hold a space where people feel calm and safe, where their nervous system settles and regulates, and they are able to share freely what is on their heart and mind. So important. This opens the channel for healing messages and guidance to come through and be received and embraced with ease. She receives messages and guidance in a variety of ways, bringing beautiful insights and new perspectives that help the people she serves feel better as they navigate their life and healing journey. In her work as an energy healer, she weaves her love and connection with stones together with her love and knowledge of anatomy, making the sessions unique and powerful. This blending of love and knowledge creates a deeply relaxing, healing, and transformative experience, whether it is through a reading, a crystal healing, or a guidance mentoring session. Her why is always the same: to support you in healing as you navigate your life. Thank you so much for joining us today, and stay tuned as we get started with the conversation. Well, hello to you, Miss Krista. It is so good to see your face.
I am so thrilled to be sharing this space with you today. I can't even tell you, I've been looking forward to it all week.
It is delightful. You know, it's so funny when I had the spirit nudge to do this. I really didn't know where it was going to go. And I started thinking about how valuable the conversations are behind the scenes that I've had, that I've had with people. And I thought, wow, I wonder if other people would benefit from these kinds of conversations. And I love the fact that you and I met, gosh, what was that, 2019, 2020, maybe somewhere
Yeah.
around in there? It feels like it's been forever, but we actually met in a business group on Facebook, actually. And it's so funny how many beautiful friendships that I have made with people that I've never even got to hug.
Right?
you know and I'm so excited that you're here. And one of the things that jumped out at me, not only do I just love you as a human, but one of the things that I loved is with my work, I often start with the mind-body connection. And I loved the fact that you've got the anatomy background that goes in with your work. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that and just kind of tell us how kind of these things came together and came together for you.
Well, it's been a very interesting journey because after my divorce, I moved into my little cottage and I needed a job that would allow me to work from home because I was having a number of physical issues. I had chronic pain and fatigue and all the things at that time. And so it's so funny because my ex-husband actually suggested medical transcription. And so I did some research and I took a course, and it was through that I had the remembering of how much I loved human anatomy. When I was a kid, we had the fabulous Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yes.
We had this set of books, and in the H book, they had the human body, and it was a series of like clear pages that were layered together that was all the different body systems.
I remember that.
Right, if I could find this, I think it was like circa 1978 or something like that. I can still picture the book.
Yeah, me
I
too.
would love to have a copy of it if I could find it.
Yeah.
But these pages were layered together, and you could flip through them and look at all the different human body systems. And I can remember sitting on the living room floor and flipping through it and just being fascinated by it. And somewhere along the line, that kind of dropped out of my awareness. But this medical transcription course, because when you go through it, you have to learn all the body systems, you have to learn everything about human anatomy, all the terms, and all the bits and pieces, and so that when doctors are dictating, you can understand what the heck they're talking about, right? Know how to.
Yeah, for sure.
And it just ignited this remembering of this love of the human body and how amazing it is and its capacity for healing. And after my course was over, I bought the 1897, I think it was published, Grey's Anatomy textbook as a gift to myself. Just
Yeah.
fun to be able to go through. Has the smallest print of any book I own.
You break out the readers, right?
I had the readers and a magnifying glass, Tammy. Like, I had them both, because it's got tiny print, but then it also has these fantastic drawings and diagrams. And so somehow that came to be blended with my crystal healing, because I was able to, really visualize the human anatomy. And then I did my certification as a crystal healer. And so I was able to bring together the stones and the anatomy, and really have had some amazing experiences helping people with their physical body using stones and energy. So
I love that so much. And, while you were talking, I began kind of thinking about my own journey. I have been a transcriptionist in my day too, but not a medical transcriptionist. So my very first adult job was with the Internal Revenue Service, and I was a transcriptionist listening to people. I was in the typing pool, and I would transcribe things that people were talking about. Now, that was about IRS collections, very different than the kind of work we do today. And
yeah.
then fast forward, I worked as an office manager for a clinical psychologist, and I used to be a transcriptionist for him. So I was getting all of the mental health type of things. And then moving forward, I just finished yoga teacher training, and I'm in a yoga therapist program, and there's some physical anatomy. So during my own journey, I began having a lot of health issues, and which got me connected to the mind body connection and understanding that. And while my work often works a lot with the emotions and the subconscious, there are other things that tie the body and the mind together. And I just began to think about how all these pieces, we've been given these hints all along. And I had said this on another episode, is that I was a former private investigator, and I've always loved solving puzzles. So when we look back at our life, all these things may seem unrelated, but they actually all come together in our bigger work.
Absolutely. They all weave together. And I mean, there's that, emotional connection to the physical body. And I mean, recognizing where emotions get trapped in their physical body, right? I get mental health reports, I get surgical reports, I get all the things, right?
Yeah.
But they're not separate things. It's like the things that, prop up on our path. They're not actually separate things. They're like the mycelium of mushrooms and the roots of trees. They're all woven together and connected in some way. And it sometimes takes us a little while
Yeah.
to find all the pieces and put them together.
For sure. I was saying that to someone in a post earlier today. It's like, a lot of this, we were talking specifically about limiting beliefs, but I feel like it's all kind of the same because there's a time where it just feels like it's this big conglomeration of stuff, like this big ball of stuff. And, it's almost like this knotted up stuff, and you can't always see anything but this big knotted up stuff. Or someone is only focused on one teeny part, and it's a whole system. It's a
Right.
whole system of what's going on. And this healing journey, um gosh, has just got so many parts to it. And there are people who don't even know where to start. And that's another thing that I thought these conversations would be so great, because you never know when something that we might share might be just the little nugget that someone is needing to help them get to the
Right.
next place.
That thread that pulls. I worked in a jewelry store for a while, and people would bring in their knotted necklaces, right?
I
And
use this analogy all the time. Yeah.
I would take like two little pins, and anybody who was working, they'd like give it to Krista because she can unravel that. And but it was like this painstaking process of, fiddling the little strands apart. And then all of a sudden you would find the one thread, the one piece of the necklace that you pulled that, and all of a sudden it just unraveled and you had
100%.
a necklace. And it's so true of the healing journey. It's,
It is. I love it. I often refer to it as zip line healing. I was like, you may think that you've got to deal with this and this and this and this and this and this and this, because that's what I tried to do through 30 years of traditional counseling. When
right.
I found that what's happening is often and I use weeds as an analogy too. It's often you're chopping off the top of the weed. Well, it's still there, it's still going to grow. You've got to find the root to get it out, up and out. And once you do it, almost like, imagine the zip line, zip, and it just like heals that entire line of things, and you're not having to go through years of each little incident you know
Right.
so I just think that is fantastic, so fantastic. And I love how you have woven that into the work that you do. That's what makes every single person so unique. Like out in the world, they talk about competition and they talk about this and that. And yet, every single person has such a unique journey and how they put those pieces together to help the people that they came here to serve.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been one of my challenges has been, with, starting this type of holistic healing guidance business, has been trying to figure out how all these pieces do go together, right?
For sure. Yeah.
And because in a reading, oftentimes stones will speak up, right? So the crystals come into that. In a crystal healing, there might be, channeled messages that come through, and they're not separate pieces. They
Mhm.
all weave together. And that's, I think that's the illusion of separation is one of the things I think that we're really kind of dismantling right now, is realizing that, they're not all these separate bits and pieces. Everything does weave together. And
A
it's,
100%. And for in the healing journey and the entrepreneurial journey and the our connection to spirit, source, God, universe, there is no separation. And that is where I think so much suffering can be found, is attempting to pinpoint something because you're only seeing like this little tiny piece of the picture of the puzzle. And
right.
so often I see people dismissing things because they think that they are, oh, that's not it, or I don't believe in that, or oh, I'm afraid of that, or oh, I'm not going to talk about that. And yet, what's happening is they are missing a critical piece to their own journey.
Yeah. It's almost like, well, that's too small, it's unimportant, it's insignificant. But those small little insignificant things oftentimes lead us to the bigger, more significant things, right? You have to start where you are
Mhm.
rather than, going digging for more. It's like, if this is what's presenting itself to you right now, look at that. Don't go hunting around and digging around for something bigger or something messier or something more mucky or whatever. This is what's being presented to you right now that's asking for your attention. So pay attention to it. It will lead you where you need to go without, like I say, going and hunting and digging for something else because what's presenting itself seems small and unimportant and insignificant.
So true. And yet there's also, I find in the holistic work, a lot of times people are afraid of the spiritual part of things. They're thinking there's something sinister going on or whatever. And I find that come up in conversation quite a bit with people, and they are afraid and they call it certain things, and they think things are bad or harmful. And the important part, another reason why I felt it was important to have these conversations, is for people to recognize that there are things in this world that are dark, and there are things in this world that are light, and it is important to understand the difference and be able to discern for yourself. And often it is the person who is not the person who's seeking help, but the particular practitioner or the particular person in power or the particular person in the seat of helping others. They can go one way or the other using the same tools, whatever that is, whether that be crystals or whether it be oracle cards or tarot cards, or whether it be a scalpel, or whether it be a prescription pad, or whether it be a Bible or a Quran or whatever.
Absolutely.
Whoever who is in the seat of the teacher is the really important piece of the puzzle to understanding how to choose practitioners and choose people to work with that are there to help you, not do you harm.
Right. And like there's so much distortion of, you know, how things are used and how things are perceived. And I mean, this, I've only seen it pop up a couple of times, but this whole yoga is demonic thing
Yep,
that's been popping up lately, I'm sure you've probably seen it.
I've seen it. Yeah.
And I read, and I don't even know why I read it, because it was like it, but it was so twisted. The perspective was so twisted and so distorted, and there wasn't, the person who made this post didn't have a true understanding of what they were talking about.
Yep.
And that energy came right through the post. Like it was like, oh my honey, what? Like, no, just no.
Uh-huh.
And
I
there's,
I had the same experience, and it's actually with someone who made the post willy-nilly. I don't think it had anything to do with the fact that I'm in school to be a yoga therapist. I don't think it had anything. I don't even think she even knew that. But she's known me since I was born.
yeah,
And I'm like, what is happening right now? Like, what do you mean? And the thing about it is, it's this this fear-based judgment that happens often. And I said, the interesting thing is, I have literally dedicated my life to helping people and doing my best to heal my own shit so I
right,
can help people and make a difference in the world. And if you somehow deem that as bad or unworthy or something else, then I don't think the problem is with me.
right. It's the distorted, twisted, fear-based, inverted perspective. Like it's backwards, it's upside down, it's twisted around, like it, and I think people feel that when they
Hmm.
read it. People will feel that ickiness, but they may think that they're feeling the ickiness because of the content of it, as opposed to the fact that what they're feeling is the distortion in the content,
For sure.
right?
And, you know, I tell people who have worked with me sometimes, you know, I came from Oklahoma, which is, I know you're in Canada. Well, in Oklahoma, that is considered the Bible Belt, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of interesting belief systems that go on there. And after I had gone through 30 years of counseling, I had just faced a near death experience. I had gotten gangrene in my intestines, almost did not make it through that. I came out of that feeling like I needed something more in my life to help with my healing. And I started to feel like I wanted to try out meditation, and I didn't know anything about it. And I asked around, and this was 2011. I asked around, nobody I knew anything about that, right? They were like, I don't know. And so I was in a like a little tea house one day waiting for some tea, and I opened Natural Awakenings magazine. I'd never seen that at the time. And it said mindfulness meditation 101, learn to meditate. And I was like, this is for me. This is for
Yeah.
me. And so I realized it was in a place that I had never been before, and a place that I felt scared of, and I didn't know what to expect. It seemed like some kind of Buddha place or something. I don't know anything about this. I've said before, I said, I didn't know if they sacrificed people there. Like, I don't know, you know. And so I had those exact fears.
Yeah.
And I said, and I walked in terrified. I mean, my hands were sweaty, my gut was tied in a knot the whole way, because I was thinking, I don't know what I'm doing. I may be jumping off a cliff here. I don't know what to do. And I walked in and felt the most calming peace come over me. And the teacher, she and I met, and she greeted me, and she spoke to me in such a way that I had never been treated in my whole life, no matter how many churches I'd been to, no matter how many support groups I had been to. I had never, or human experiences, I'd never had this experience before. And in that moment, I said, I don't know what this is about, and I don't care, because I've never felt like this before. And then later I became, you know, a meditation teacher. And one of the things I share with people is these fears that we have, I get it. There's no judgment around that, because I've had these fears before, and I don't even know where they came from. Like, I have no idea. I wasn't taught that. I don't know where that came from, but I was terrified because it was new, it was weird, it was different. I didn't know. And I had completely misguided thoughts about it. And so I like to share that story so that people understand learning how to discern helps you to pick things that are right for you versus things that are actually going to harm you.
Right. And so the question that's in my head is like, is feeling as afraid as you did, feeling as terrified as you were, what was it that got you to go walk through the door of that place feeling that way? Like,
Yeah.
what was it that prompted you to, I don't know, stick a pin in the fear, or, just set it aside and say, okay, whatever, I'm just going to give it a shot. But
What I attribute it to all of the trauma and abuse in my life. Um, because the trauma and abuse in my life taught me that I could survive anything, literally anything. And I had just come through a near death experience on top of that, and it wasn't the first one.
right,
And I thought, well, what I know is I have been working on my own healing journey for so long, and it feels like I'm getting nowhere. And maybe it's because I don't have the right information, or maybe I haven't found the right tool, because whatever I've been doing, while it was helpful, I did not want another pill. I did not want another diagnosis. I did not want another thing that seemed to be the same. I needed something different, and I was willing to do whatever it took to take care of myself at that point. I had made a decision that I wasn't going to live my life like that anymore. And I thought, okay, well, I've survived all these things. What's the worst that can happen to me? Death? Okay, bring it on, because I'm already facing that. I,
Yeah.
and that, quite honestly, that's what it was. I was desperate for change. I was desperate for healing. I was desperate for something that I had not found before.
Yeah. A kind of support and connection, and just deciding
Yeah.
that
Back in those days, my favorite phrase was, I am sick and tired of being sick and tired.
we have said the same words.
Yep.
Because
And
that's
it's
that
the same.
decision. It's that decision, because I remember saying those same things. I'm so sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I finally, we had moved around a lot, but I found a new doctor, and she understood that I was done being poked and prodded. I was done putting chemicals in my body that my body did not like. I was done with all
Yeah.
that. Thank
Yeah.
you. And she sent me to this clinic, and it's this one little clinic that we have here in Nova Scotia. And one of the first things that I went into was the mindfulness based stress reduction program. It was an 8-week program teaching you how to meditate.
Yeah.
And it just opens up so much,
Yeah.
um, having that support. And this was a group thing. I think the group I was in was like 25 people, and it was
Amazing.
several hours a week. And then there were 2 like full day sessions. And it was an altering program, an altering thing that I went through. And that was also the same place where I had my first energy healing. It was where I had the nurse practitioner, so classically trained, not classically trained, I don't like to use that word, because medicine as we know it is like 150 years old. It's a baby. But she practiced, was certified in craniosacral therapy.
Hmm.
And so that's where I had my first energy work experience. And it's just kind of all rolled from there. And I want to say, I think that was around the same year. You said 2011. I want to say that was around the same year.
Well, what's so interesting about that, now that you're talking, when I think back, when my health really took a dive, it was 2002 is when all the diagnoses really started coming at me faster than I could keep up with. I was actually in my undergrad degree at that point, and had to do some sort of paper, and found something about the mind body connection. And at that point, I was really looking at my weight, because my weight had gotten pretty substantial, and there were all these different things that were happening. So that was kind of my first toe into the holistic world around the mind body connection. And then around 2005, I had again was facing some other things that were, my system was shutting down, my body was shutting down. My regular doctor sent me to a doctor, and basically the idea is that he took people that other people couldn't figure out, kind of like the problem children, right? They're having,
Like Dr. House.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, like they're having problems, and you need to go see this guy. And so when I went to see him, my left leg was about as hard as a wooden table leg. Like it just, and I had all this stuff going on. And what I now, looking back, I am fairly certain he was using polarity and cranial sacral, but those words were never spoken. I didn't know what he was using, what he was doing. His treatment was different than anyone I'd ever seen. And that was another step on the journey. And then all these other things started to happen. And it's like I didn't had never even tried an essential oil until 2014. And at that point, I had already stopped all medications. I had made such progress on my healing journey, but then I would have other problems, and then it's like it would start all over again. And I remember I met someone and they put a drop of essential oil in my hand because my stomach was hurting. My stomach always hurt. That was the near death thing that happened. And
Yeah.
I remember looking at and I was like, what is this kind of voodoo crap you just put in my hand? I think that's actually what I said. And she said, well, it's an essential oil and this is for blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, and I mean, I was so and she said, well, just, rub it on your belly and see what you think. And I said, okay, sure. Yeah, I rubbed it on my belly and went on about my way. Next thing I knew, all of a sudden my belly felt better. And I
Yeah.
was like, what in the world? And so it was that moment that I fell in love with that particular essential oil brand, and I never looked back. I never used another oil. That brand of oil changed my life. And so it's these interesting little micro stories that you see where it's like you never know what you're going to overhear or just happen to try, or what door you're going to happen to walk into that's going to open up your entire healing process.
100%. And it's just being open to the things that present themselves, like you finding the magazine,
Yeah.
right? Or this random essential oil. And it's like these little light bulb moments that go off. It's like, oh shit, that worked. Holy crap. What is happening here? Okay, I don't understand it, but it's really cool. So let's explore it a little more, right?
For sure. And I used to laugh at people, not people, but at myself. I would say sometimes things don't work because they're out of context. Sometimes things don't work for you because you don't know the whole thing. Like the first time I had a green juice, man, I was like, what kind of grass and dirt crap are you trying to feed me? Like, blah. Well, what I didn't know was that my body was so used to eating junk and had so much sugar and carbs and every fried foods and everything else in my body that anything that was actually good for me tasted terrible. But what
Yeah.
I found was after I made all the faces and was so, out of control and dramatic over the green juice, I realized, wow, my body feels kind of good. It was almost like my body was craving it. And I was like, well, they're going to have to do something with that taste. But the more I got crap out of my body, the more that tasted good to me.
Yeah.
The more I wanted it, the more I wanted to. So I didn't really have to make a choice of, and I work with people around nutrition on this. Like sometimes I don't want you to get in a space where you feel deprived, where you feel like, oh, well, somebody's taken all my stuff away. That's not helpful. But
No.
maybe do what you're doing and then maybe give this a try and just notice what you notice about this.
Yeah, well, and it's getting your mind to listen to your body,
Yeah.
because your body will tell you, like, you will, have a cookie and then not feel so great. And like that's your body saying, I didn't want that.
Yeah.
And so then you become aware and it becomes easier to make the decision, to make the change. But it's not about like the whole deprivation thing just doesn't work, because like when things are taken away from us, it makes us want them more.
For sure.
If they naturally kind of phase their way out because of things that we're noticing, and it's like, oh, that makes me feel like crap. Okay, so if I eat 3 cookies, I feel like shit. If I eat 2, it's not as bad. If I eat just 1, I feel okay. So I can still have my cookie and not feel like crap. Let's do that instead of eating the 3 cookies that make me feel like shit.
Perfect. And I think what really happens is we have been, whether it's food or whatever it is, we've been feeding ourselves so much crap. Again, whether it's food, whether it's what we're reading, watching, listening to, whatever it is, putting on our skin, whatever it is, we
Yeah.
don't often recognize it because the body kind of went, oh, okay, well, it doesn't matter what I'm telling you, so let me just get more and more quiet. It's like you turn off the signals. You just think you're sick all the time, and you don't realize it's everything that you're consuming in your body through all of your senses that is really what is just keeping you sicker and sicker.
Yep. Getting rid of plastic containers was something that made a difference for me. Getting rid of air fresheners and like chemical cleaners and all of that made a huge difference. Changing my laundry detergent because we absorb that stuff through our
Yeah.
skin. Um, like just all these little micro changes, right? Getting rid of the non-stick pans and going to cast iron. Just little, the non-stick one is scratched. I need something new. So if I'm buying something new anyway, let me buy something, replace it with something that's going to be a little bit more healthy for me, right? And
100%.
the micro changes, they all add up.
They do. I recently bought an organic mattress. Now, the old me would have said, what the hell? That's some kind of marketing thing, right? And to be clear, I want to show something to those watching. This is a plastic water bottle. Do I know that not drinking out of a plastic water bottle would be better for me? I do. Am I there yet? No. Another thing I want to point out, I'm drinking out of a styrofoam cup. This looks like a big tasty drink. Let me have a drink. So what I used to share with people, this drink used to have Diet Coke in it. And I used to drink about 8 of these a day. 8 of these a day.
I remember.
Was I ever going to put it down? No, this is actually tea. This is unsweetened tea. So what I did, and this is for people thinking, well, my situation, I couldn't do that. Well, when I made the decision to walk away from Diet Coke, I knew that the kindest thing to do to myself, because it was such an addictive problem, was to create an environment to where it was a little bit of a change. Now, I've been at this for 2 years now. I don't drink Diet Coke, but I have the cup and I have the straw and I have the ice and I have the tea. Now, there will be another step that I go through, and that may seem crazy, but for me, that's what I needed to do. And I own that.
Yeah, well, and I think that's what people, so many people think that the baby steps don't matter,
Oh, they
right? They
matter so
don't
much.
make a little tiny change because, well, it's just one little tiny change. It's not going to matter. But when you make that little tiny change and then you make it over several months and then you take the next step and make the next tiny change, when you look back 3 months, 6 months, a year later, it's like, holy shit, that one first little change led me all the way here. But we humans, we like to, we're at step 322 and we want to be at step 5,000. We don't realize that all those little baby steps in between is how we get to step 5,000. Right? Like,
Absolutely.
we don't have
Absolutely.
7 league boots where you can take one step and you know
Well, it's so true. And the other thing is about giving yourself grace in the process. It's not about beating yourself up because you weren't able to do it 100%. There are so many, I have gotten rid of not all chemicals in my life, because I'm still drinking out of a plastic water bottle. I'm still doing this. And yet, most of what is going on in my life, there is no chemicals in it. There is no, I've made so many changes, but it didn't happen all at once. It's even around food. You know, I did a little live stream one day about organic, like when to buy, when is it important to buy organic. And I said there was a period of time I was like, what kind of shit, this is a marketing scheme, what is that? Until I learned what it meant and understood what it meant and understood why. And the fact that when I was a child, nothing was called organic because we had pretty clean food, you know?
Yeah, it was.
And it was over time as things began to, population began to grow, they began to realize, oh, they can modify this and they can make chemicals on that and they can grow things, and our food has changed over time. And so it's about, and it can be overwhelming, and which is why it's important to find a practitioner, a coach, a healer, a teacher, a guide, a doctor, whatever it is, someone who has walked the path that you are trying to walk now, who says, okay, here are some shortcuts, but they're not shortcutting the benefit, they're shortcutting the path so that you are not going down 30 years looking for the solutions.
Right, yeah,
You know?
to get, get you the knowledge and get you where you want to go quicker. And I think there's also the other side of understanding that if your body has been exposed to a whole bunch of stuff for decades, if you try and get rid of everything all at one time, it's going to cause a cascade in your body that is
100%.
not going to feel good. It's
Yeah.
going to make you feel worse, which is a whole other reason for doing it in little tiny steps so that your body doesn't go into a healing crisis, into a shock. And having
Oh,
someone who understands that is important too, because there's, when you do big stuff, and I mean, sometimes we do big stuff, we take big leaps and we make big changes.
mhm.
And there is oftentimes a healing crisis that comes with that.
Yeah.
There's the exhaustion that comes. And, you've got to understand when when you have the capacity to make that big leap, understanding that, hey, you know what, I might feel like crap and be real tired for a couple weeks after this, but I will come through the other side of it. And, balancing the baby steps with the bigger steps. And
Well, 100%, kind of like we were talking about the green juice. I mean, it's one of those things. Had I not had other people say that gets better, it really
right,
does. I realize it tastes kind of nasty in the beginning and it gets better. Your body starts to adapt and to change the same way it adapted and changes to this. You brought up a great point. When I became a holistic nutrition specialist, my instructor was actually a naturopath. And one of the things we had talked about specific were people with severe alcoholism. Okay.
yeah,
So that is a really great example that if you take the alcohol away from somebody with alcoholism, you can kill them.
yeah,
There is actually a process that needs to go through. And if you think, oh, well, what they need is let's remove this alcohol and fill them full of all this great, yummy, organic food, chances are they are going to be so sick that they can't recover. This is not something that can be done blindly. It's not something that can be done without some help a lot of times.
yeah,
And now there are other more or less extreme cases. Like in my case, I opted to go off all medications. Well, everybody had, freaked out over that. Well, that was my choice. And did I know I was going to be sick? I did. Did I know I was potentially doing something that was life threatening to myself? I did. And I was at the point then, I no longer cared. That is the amount of pain. Bless you. That is the that is the amount of pain I was in.
yeah.
But that
Yeah.
was my choice, not
And that was
advocating
an
that.
informed, educated choice, right? Like that was
It was my choice at that time because I was tired of pain,
yeah.
but it was a choice I made for myself. And then began to become more and more educated about how to help myself because sometimes I do things backwards. So
That's okay, we all do.
yeah.
Imagine what would have happened in your body if you had like completely done with the Diet Coke the same thing that you did with the medications and went right into the green juice. Like you probably would have, you know, felt like absolute crap,
Hmm.
may have given up on the whole thing and not gotten to where you are now, where, at some point you'll be ready for that next little step. And it's a
Absolutely.
beautiful thing. I am so impressed. I'm so proud of you for being off the Diet Coke. I can't even tell you. I think that's fantastic.
Well, and that's one of the things, the biggest things is I like people to know is one of the things that can be the most harmful to us is that self-judgment. If we didn't do it exactly right, or we didn't do it exactly perfect, or we didn't do it the way someone else thinks we ought to do it. The point is are you doing it? Are you making steps? And how can we celebrate every little step along
Every
the
single
way?
one, 100%. The celebration is the best part. Like,
It, yes.
I mean, the littlest, tiniest things. And I mean, when I was married, towards the end of my marriage, wine was a thing. This was our coping mechanism, because if we were drinking wine all night, we didn't have to have a conversation and deal with things,
Yeah.
right? And we were drinking a lot of wine. And, you know, now I still like my wine, but like I'll pour half a glass.
Yeah.
And it's been a process to get to this point. And I completely lost my train of thought.
Well, you were talking about celebrations and we were talking about baby steps and celebrations and
Yeah. And I mean, if I were beating myself up because I'm still drinking wine, that's that's no good. Beating ourselves up about things just makes us feel like shit. And the whole point in healing is to feel better. So if we're beating up on ourselves, it's the opposite of what we're trying to do. It's the opposite of what we're trying to achieve. But if we celebrate even the littlest, tiniest things, it just makes the journey so much more enjoyable, right? Like joy and fun and celebration, happy dancing because you only ate one cookie instead of three. Woohoo!
for sure. And we all have our own things. Like I haven't had even a taste of alcohol since probably, I don't know, 2017, 2018, but it was never really a thing for me, so me walking away from it, no big deal. Now, 2017, I went on a celibacy journey and I've been on that for 7 years. Well, okay, much bigger thing, right? But I knew for some other healing that I needed to do around relationships that this was a really important thing for me. Diet Coke was my daily friend, it was my daily friend. And so for that, to use a medication term, I needed to titrate myself into sort of baby stepping. When I quit smoking in 2002, um, the ways that I went about quitting was something that I really wouldn't recommend for someone else. I stayed angry for 5 years after the fact. Well, there's kinder ways to walk away from things than what I did. And so I think those baby steps and the celebrations that we talked about, I mean, honestly, learning how to do that is one of the absolute essential parts of the healing journey.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, the way that you, like you say, the way that you did it, that you wouldn't recommend for someone else to do,
Yeah.
just informs your practice and your healing and your support of other people in a really unique way, right? Because
Yeah.
you did it and you got through it, but it gives you a whole different perspective on, maybe we could be, maybe there's a more gentle, maybe there's a more practical, softer, easier on the body, heart, mind, spirit way to
Yeah.
get through this thing, right?
100%. Well, and the cigarette thing was, it was a coping skill that was a severe addiction. It was 2.5 packs a day of Marlboro Reds. I mean, I was not a light smoker. And the reason I smoked what I smoked, and the reason I smoked as much as I smoked, because there was still a lot of unhealed emotions and trauma in my body, and taking those cigarettes away was was detrimental to me. Now, they went away because I'd been diagnosed with emphysema and I felt like I didn't have a choice. And
Yeah,
yet, the way that I went about it was so unkind and created more storms in my body because of the way that I did that. And that's why I don't recommend that for people. It's like, let's see if we can heal the underlying reason that you needed to smoke or drink Diet Coke or drink wine or eat
yeah,
fried food, eat 3 cookies or whatever it is. Let's work
yeah,
on that first so this part can naturally start to fade for you, you know?
yeah. And
Yeah.
things really do, like when we deal with the underlying emotion or trauma or whatever it is, the thing, when we deal with that within ourselves, within our mind, within our body, the things that are outside of us that are the the examples, the behaviors, the outward things, they do just kind of automatically start to shift and change. It's not as hard as trying to make those physical, practical, outside changes without doing that inner it's an inside job, right?
It really is. And you bring up a great point, because the other thing that I've found on that is, let's say you were often, we'll use the word trigger. That seems to be everybody's buzzword lately.
Right.
So let's say you never quite knew what was triggering you to go for that second, third, fourth, rest of the bag of cookies or whatever it was. And then
Yeah.
when you heal the underlying thing, you might recognize you don't even want the cookie. Or maybe you want one cookie, but you have no desire to keep going. And it's in those moments that you realize how much healing work you've actually done. You're like, oh, look at that. Let me celebrate that, because now it's presenting itself to me. I had this thing happen that normally would have set me off and sent me to the cookies, and I'm good. Um,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing, because the very first step I find in healing is the awareness of what's going on with you, is
Yeah.
becoming aware that, oh, every time I get off the phone with so and so, I got to go head for the cookies
Yeah.
or whatever,
Or the
or
cigarette, a glass of wine, or whatever it is. But
whatever.
it's
Yeah.
that the awareness is like 90% of the work, and that's like we were talking about earlier, is it might be an awareness of a tiny little thing, of something that seems inconsequential, but if you can be aware of it, it's going to lead you to the other places, to the other things, and in a softer, gentler way than without it, right? The awareness,
Absolutely.
like 90% of the work.
So, so true. All right. Wow. Well, I think we are about at the end of our time. And what a fun, fun conversation this has been for me. I hope you enjoyed it so
I
much.
I have enjoyed this time so much with you,
Thank
and
you.
I'm curious. I'm curious to hear, when people watch, what awareness it brings forward for them, and where it takes them, and where it leads them, and
Yeah.
yeah.
For sure. Do you, before we close, do you have any final questions or thoughts or anything you want to share?
I really don't. I think it's like I say, I'm very curious, and I mean, it's the curiosity, it's the awareness. And so, I mean, just inviting people into that curiosity, and what awarenesses are in your face right now, and even if they seem small, pay attention.
Absolutely. I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. Thank you all for joining us on the Holistic Pathway. I am Tammy Coyne, your holistic alchemist, helping you change from pain to possibilities and possibilities to purpose. And we will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.